Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion for April 27th, 2020, recorded around 4:33 p.m. Eastern Time. The main story continues to be the very warm Atlantic Main development region, with anomalies across this region running a half degree to a degree Celsius above the long-term average, with a small area of roughly about 1/2 degree above the long-term average right near and just south of the Cape Verde Island, the Cabo Verde Islands. And we're also watching the ENSO 3.4 region, which is roughly located in about here, for signs of cooling. And if we go to this anomaly chart here, this is the 850 millibar pressure zonal wind anomalies. The red is the westerly winds and the blue is the easterly winds, which would cause upwelling. And we've seen that continue to persist across most of the equatorial Pacific from roughly about mid-April all the way and continuing in through May, and is expected to deepen pretty significantly once we get into May, which should cause the equatorial Pacific to actually cool significantly. And there could even be a potential La Nina event setting up for the upcoming winter season, winter 2020 into 2021. We could be seeing the potential for an a La Nina conditions, which is the opposite effect of El Nino, to develop across this part of the region. Of course, that would implicate significant changes for the United States weather and also for the Atlantic hurricane season. So a lot to kind of talk about there over the next coming weeks and months. But certainly one of the more interesting things also, this will correlate to about 60 west, which is right over portions of the main development region of the Atlantic. This could also cause some cooling. You can see maybe the potential for some increased trade winds across this area, which could indicate some of the potential cooler anomalies potentially setting up across this region, but it does not appear to be particularly strong at this point in time. Across the tropical Atlantic and tropical Pacific, the Eastern Pacific system, which became a tropical depression, has since weakened and dissipated. And of course, in the Atlantic Basin, there is nothing going on at this current time. An interesting note from Penn State today came out from the Earth System Science Center in Penn State up in Pennsylvania, and they have released a North Atlantic hurricane season prediction of about 15 to 24 named storms, with a best estimate of around 20 named storms, which they indicate could be one of the most active Atlantic hurricane seasons on record, obviously following in the footsteps of a 2005-like season. Going to the 5-day data again, we are taking a look now at the temperature anomalies from the surface below to about 500 meters. And you do notice that the warmer anomalies, this is in the equatorial Pacific in the ENSO 3.4 region. We do notice that we are starting to see some of the cooler anomalies certainly taking place over here, but we still have some warmer anomalies showing up at the very skin of the surface. But you do notice that underneath here, and that is going to be very supportive with the upcoming easterly wind burst, we are going to see this large expansive area of cooler anomalies make their way up to the surface and eventually begin to expand out across this region. And what that's going to do is really cool off. That is going to really cool off this area of the equatorial Pacific right now, or right there rather, and that's going to support a conditionally favorable environment for the Atlantic Basin and a negative environment for the Eastern Pacific. Of course, our main development region in the Pacific is roughly located about in here, with about normal to about a degree or 1/2 degree above the long-term average. But noticeably, the Atlantic is certainly warmer than average. A warm Caribbean and a warm Gulf of Mexico setting up with an AMO type pattern starting to set up across this region that will conditionally favor what could be a very, very busy Atlantic hurricane season so far. And we're going to obviously have to see how that all shapes up. So far, though, this is the GFS coming from TropicalTidbits.com, Levi Cowan's site. And you do notice that we are not really seeing any sort of development. This is the GFS out to about 384 hours valid through May 13th at about 7 o'clock in the morning. you do notice nothing is trying to consolidate across this region in the world over here, so there's no tropical development expected anytime soon, certainly anywhere close in the Atlantic or the Pacific Basin, but of course we will always start to monitor that. And one of the main reasons why is we're still very set up in a very unfavorable environment, with the only sort of favorable environment setting up near the Lesser Antilles with about 20 to 25 knots of shear. Everything else is running about 25 on average, about 25 to 60 knots of shear. Of course, that's going to delineate and really kind of set apart any tropical activity. And of course, we don't expect tropical activity in May anyway, but of course we can still get some in. Indications are we could still see some early season activity going into mid-May and through early parts of June, so we're going to be continuing to monitor that very closely. And the Storm Prediction Center, just taking a real quick look at the lower 48 weather. We have a slight risk for severe storms today across the Fort Stockton area up through about Abilene, Texas, with no real tornado threat, but certainly a wind and hail threat. And then during the day tomorrow, an enhanced risk near the Dallas area, Oklahoma City. Of course, a tornado threat for the Oklahoma City regions, all the way up through Peoria, Illinois, Des Moines, Iowa, up to near Chicago, Illinois, Milwaukee, and all the way far south as Shreveport, Alexander, Louisiana, including Houston, Austin, Waco, Dallas, and Abilene, Texas. And then during the day, we're going to start to see that begin to translate over throughout the rest of the week. And again, we will always be continuing to monitor the latest severe weather information and hurricane weather around here. Hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon, and I will see you all later. Be safe.